So, I'm so glad we're here. Are you glad we're here? Yeah. I'm not anywhere. Anyway, this is an awesome month. It's very empowering because it has to do with prosperity. Thank you, Joanne, for giving my talk for me. That's pretty cool. I loved it. It was a great thing. Anyway, in prosperity, how many of you feel we need prosperity? Raise your hands. How many feel we need to have prosperity? Bob, you didn't raise your hand. Well, today we're going to find out something different. There's not one person in this room that needs prosperity. That's right. You agree with that? We don't need it, for goodness sakes. If anything at all we learned this month is that the mystics were absolutely right on target when they said that anyone who does not experience prosperity and abundance in their life, they're working against themselves. They're restricting the flow of abundance in their life because that's who they are. They are this idea of energy of prosperity. And so today we're going to look at all that. Ralph Waldo Emerson, I love Emerson. What I like about him is he's very esoteric. You have to read it, and then you have to read it a couple times, and you try to decipher, and then you come out with what he really means. But he defined prosperity differently. He said the man in the storm, and he meant women too. Mike, don't chew on me on this one. He did it. I didn't do it. I mean, you know. The man in the storm prays to God not for safety from danger. The man in the storm prays to God for deliverance from fear. What do we like about that? And when we look at that, this guy's getting right into an esoteric message about consciousness. And what's kind of amazing about that is that we learn that everything that happens to us has to do with this whole idea of consciousness. Because when I thought about this a few minutes ago, I was sitting there, and I think I'll use it, that our relationship that we have with life itself is directly related to the relationship we have in our own minds and emotions. Do you agree with that? And so I'll picture that. And that's, and we say, well, okay then, why don't we need abundance? Well, let's look at this. Prosperity has nothing to do with goods. It does not mean anything, and it has very little to do with the accumulation of stuff. And this brings to mind that I thought about this morning, about the guy who won $38 million in the lottery. How many of you remember that? I mean, it happened. He won $38 million in the lottery, and he went bankrupt and became mentally deficient. Okay, now this emphasizes what we're talking about when we talked about consciousness. What happened was after he hits the newspaper that he's got $38 million, well, everybody started calling him, asking him for funds, trying to sell him stuff. He ended up buying houses that he didn't really need. He bought a mansion. He bought cars and all this stuff. His own brother hired a hitman to take him out so that he would inherit the money. I mean, it was just amazing. It became a disaster in his life, and he ended up broke, and he ended up mentally deficient. And so when we look at this whole idea of prosperity, what does it have to do with? It has to do with what we call the universal, and I coined this morning, the universal principle of awareness. It's the universal principle of awareness. And it also has to do with the power of assuming, the assumptions. If we take a look at our whole life, we can say that everything we experience, everything that we have, every emotion is a product of what we've assumed to be true. And I got ahead of myself here. And so everything that we have depends on our concept of ourselves. So when we face situations that Emerson said that are the storms of our life, what is he telling us about? What he's telling us is this, that all of us are here to experience the calm. We're here to experience the thriving, which we call abundance or prosperity. We're here to experience the well-beingness. We're here to experience the abundance. That's what we're here to experience. However, we're also here to experience the storms in our life. And what are the storms in our life? The storms in our life are those items and those things, those circumstances that drive us crazy sometimes, that pushes us to a higher level of consciousness, that actually has the potential of bringing fear and doubt into our life. And what Emerson was saying is, we do not pray for the release of the danger. We pray for the consciousness that actually dissolves this fear. Because those ideas that we look as danger are really good things. I've mentioned this many times before, that everything that happens to us contributes to us. So rather than looking at the storms in our life as naughty, bad things that we don't want to have, and we need to pray ourselves out of it, what we're talking about, what he's talking about, is go to a higher level of consciousness and bring into your experience the consciousness, the awareness of who we are, that dissolves this whole idea of fear. Do you agree with all that? It's kind of cool. Yeah. And that's what this month's all about. It's about consciousness. It's about awareness. It's about identifying who we are. It's about knowing that there's nothing that we need. We need to get that in our thick skull. And I feel one of the... Pardon me, did I say something wrong? Oh. This, what they're saying is your skull is not that thick, Angelo. I'm just teasing. And so this is what it's about. Well, a lot of things have happened this week, this last 2 weeks, that have been really incredible. It's pushing Angelo into actually following through on what I preach about every Sunday. What a challenge. The last 2 weeks have been glorious. Because we can go into depression on the storms. And then we can bring in fear and doubt and detach ourselves from our true identity. That we are this magnificent creature, this magnificent being that already has it all. It's hard for us to realize. When I first got into religious studies and religious science, I didn't really comprehend the fact that everything that exists and everything that will exist is already present in spirit. We have a hard time grasping on that. But the whole idea of this thing is to be open. We already have it all. So what is it that we need to do, for goodness sakes? We need to be open and receptive to what is already present in spirit so that it will manifest in our life. Can we do that? It's incredible. So anyway, what happens is I get a call from our contractor, John. And John says this to me, and I could have really gone into fear and doubt, and I'll tell you what I could have gone through. John says this. He says, Angelo, you know, you predicted that, I know you're good at budgets, you ran school districts, I know, and you repeated all this stuff, my ego stuff. But he said, we're going to be actually $50,000 to $60,000 short on completing our building project. Now, when you hear something like that and you're Angelo, it's so easy to go into fear and doubt. And of course, my conditioned mind all of a sudden presented to me this idea that, oh my God, we have a building there. It's a 3,000 square foot empty building that has all these weeds growing up. And it's empty, and it's not completed. Now, my conditioned mind wanted me to focus on that. What did I focus on? I said, John, granted you feel we're short $50,000 to $60,000. However, I feel that the $50,000 and $60,000 is already present in spirit, and that it manifests in our life and helps us complete the building. And so that's what we're talking about when you use awareness, identifying with that which we are. Because I said, John, the Positive Living Center is also a life form of the divine. It is God itself expressing itself in this community to do good things for this community. And therefore, by its very nature, it is already abundant. It already has prosperity. It is already complete and done. Don't worry about it. Take it off your concern list. And so John, of course, John, I love John, I'm going to tell you about him. But he's a good guy, and I'm sure he thought, oh, sure, Angelo. And others would say, oh, that's a delusion of grandeur. And there were times years ago that I would have felt that way too. So anyway, what happens on this? It's kind of neat. And it shows this belief system in action right here in Oakhurst. That we're not foo-fooing it. That is real. 4 days later, who shows up in my office and sits there in her way? Maggie, Reverend Maggie. She walks into the office as if she owns the joint, which she does. And she sets herself down and she says, Angelo, I want to know how much we need to complete our project. And I said, well, I thought $30,000, but the contractor just talked to me a few days ago and said $50,000 to $60,000. And she says, well, I have manifested the $60,000. Wow. So Sunday, what happens is last Sunday, she's on this platform. She had me come up and did her thing about Angie and all this. You know, she likes to do that. But anyway, and she said, I manifested the money for our project that I want to contribute to the PLC. And she gave me an envelope. Well, I didn't know what was in the envelope. My friend Ken, who's been working on projects for us, he's trying to get some grant money for us. He said, did you know about this? I said, not until last Friday. But anyway, I sat there and I started peeking in the envelope. I hope you didn't see me doing that, but I was peeking to see. And I saw a check for $40,000 to deposit. Wow. And I look again, another check for $20,000 Positive Living Center. Oh my God. Ooh, this is great. What this shows is that we can go into fear when we're confronted with these storms in our life. And we can disconnect. We can disconnect from that power that we are. We can identify with the stuff. And we can feel that we don't rate prosperity unless we have to pray for it and beg for it and do all those good things. Or we can say nonsense. We are a life form of the divine. We have right in our very nature. Our nature is one of completeness, of wholeness. Our nature is abundance. That's who we are. And for goodness sakes, let's realize that and stop praying for stuff. It just doesn't. And I'm not talking about part of that. We're going to talk about that later. and so what's so glorious about this is it happens. Other things is that if we want to change something in our life, what does Angelo need to do? Well, Angelo can be the change as well. We are the change in our life. And all we have to do is change our awareness. We need to go to that power of awareness and change what it is. And the power of assumption. We can assume. They always say, fake it until you make it. That's not so bad.